From the outside, our lives looked like a picture-perfect postcard: me, Audrey, in my early 30s, and Michael, my husband of 5 beautiful years. The bond between us had weathered many seasons, and my connection with my brother Kyle was just as strong, forged since childhood and never dulled by time. So when he invited us to join him for his destination wedding in the scenic embrace of Napa Valley, it felt like life had offered us another joyous chapter. The first 2 days were everything you'd expect: sunshine spilling across the vineyards, laughter echoing through the estate, the kind of luxury that makes you forget real life exists outside those gates. But all that calm shattered like glass on the morning of day 3. At the post-wedding brunch, Michael suddenly leaned toward me, his voice low and clipped. "We need to leave. Now." I blinked at him, caught between confusion and disbelief. "What are you talking about?" I whispered back, barely masking the urgency in my tone. He didn't immediately answer. Instead, he studied me with a look I hadn't seen in years, a mixture of worry and frustration. Then, like ripping off a bandage, he said something that made the blood drain from my face. "You really didn't notice, did you? The bride?" What he revealed next made my insides knot. But before I take you deeper into this unraveling, ask yourself, have you ever felt a strange instinct around someone your whole family welcomed with open arms, but something inside you said no, something's off? That moment of doubt is exactly where this story begins. Michael and I had rolled into the Silverado resort on a warm Thursday afternoon. Kyle had spared no expense. He'd secured a vast estate on the property, complete with enough luxury rooms to house immediate family and the entire wedding party. It felt more like entering a vineyard dreamscape than a hotel. As we drove up the winding path, the world opened into endless green vines, the hills surrounding us like protective arms. On the steps of the estate, I saw my parents, first Grace and Thomas, smiling and animated, deep in conversation with Kyle. Dad, always expressive, was gesturing in that excited way of his, and Mom, bathed in golden light, looked effortlessly graceful in her flowing dress. Kyle spotted us before we could even get out of the car. "There they are," he shouted, bounding toward us like a golden retriever that hadn't seen its humans in years. He pulled me into a massive hug, lifting me right off my feet. "Where's Madison?" I asked once I caught my breath. After a firm handshake and a half-hug with Michael, Kyle grinned, "Getting pampered with the bridesmaids. You'll meet her at dinner tonight? Trust me, she's a knockout." Now I'd only been around Madison twice before, once over a rushed holiday dinner, and then again during their engagement party a few months earlier. She'd always seemed friendly, poised, polite, the type of woman who could glide through any social event without breaking a sweat. Kyle had met her less than a year ago at some charity gala, and within 5 months they were engaged. I remember thinking the pace felt fast, but Kyle had always chased life with both feet off the ground. Kyle helped us carry bags to our room on the second floor. "You two are East Wing," he explained. "Mom and Dad are in the West. Madison and I are staying in the guest house. You know, tradition." He winked. The room was stunning. A massive bed with crisp linens, a view of the valley from a private balcony, and a bathroom so grand it felt like its own spa. As I unpacked, Michael tested the bed and let out a soft whistle. "This weekend must be bleeding money." "Madison's family is footing the bill," I said. "Her dad's loaded real estate tycoon or something." That evening, under a canopy of twinkling lights, we gathered in the courtyard for the welcome dinner. It was the kind of setting you'd expect from a romance movie: long banquet tables, flickering candles, and soft music drifting through the air. That's when I saw Madison. She was stunning, a simple white dress cascading blonde waves, glowing skin, like the poster child for bridal elegance. She spotted me instantly and came over with open arms. "Audrey, I've heard so much about you. Kyle says you were practically joined at the hip growing up." Her voice rang with charm, but something about her delivery felt rehearsed, like a well-tuned script. Still, I chalked it up to nerves. Brides get weird before weddings. When I introduced her to Michael, her eyes lit up. "Ah, the famous doctor," she said, smiling wide. "Kyle mentioned you just got promoted. Chicago Memorial." "Right." Michael nodded clearly, surprised she'd remembered. She dismissed the compliment about her MBA with a flick of her wrist. "Oh, that my dad knows everyone. I got lucky with opportunities." Throughout dinner, I watched her, and what I saw was something I couldn't quite place. She floated between tables like a political candidate at a fundraiser. She knew everyone's name. She complimented just the right details. My father was especially smitten, lost in conversation as she asked about his investment firm and laughed at his dry jokes. "She's good," Michael whispered. "Very polished." "If she makes Kyle happy," I murmured, "that's what matters." The next day's rehearsal ran smoothly, largely thanks to Madison, who orchestrated everything with an almost militant grace. But something odd happened that afternoon. I went inside to use the restroom and overheard her, in a room, speaking in a tone so clipped and cold it didn't match the persona she wore outside. "I don't care what it takes. Just get it done. We've worked too hard for this to fall apart." When she noticed me in the hallway, her expression melted into warmth. "Minor flower fiasco," she said, smiling. "Nothing to panic about." But I noticed the phone in her hand was blue. Later that day, she was texting on a red-cased phone. 2 phones, 2 voices, 2 versions of the same woman. At dinner that evening, she stood up to give a heartfelt toast about how Kyle had changed her life. My mom teared up. Dad nodded in approval. Everything, at least on the surface, was going off without a hitch. But that night, walking back to our room, I turned to Michael. "Something's not right." "You noticed too," he said quietly. The next morning, over champagne breakfast, Madison looked like a bridal magazine cover model. Yet again, I saw her switching phones, stepping away for hushed calls, looking increasingly stressed. At one point, I accidentally walked in on her during one of these conversations. "Make sure the accounts are open by Sunday. We can't afford a delay." When I entered the room, she startled. "Wedding planner," she said, smiling too brightly. Always a crisis. But her wedding planner, I remembered, was a man named Jeffrey. And on that call, she'd whispered "sweetie" to someone who definitely didn't sound like a Jeffrey. Back at the table, I mentioned it casually to Michael. He gave me a look, the kind that confirmed he was also piecing together something beneath the surface. That day unfolded with wine tours, final fittings, and endless photo sessions. Madison floated through it all with that same dazzling charm, but I started paying closer attention. She gave compliments that were actually veiled critiques. Her suggestions sounded more like orders. She controlled every detail with a velvet glove but steel underneath. During the hair trials, I overheard her snap at the stylist for suggesting a small tweak. "Let's stick with what we agreed on," she said. "Smile tight. It is my wedding." Later, chatting with Stephanie, Madison's cousin and maid of honor, I mentioned how impressive Stanford was. Stephanie blinked. "Stanford? I thought she went to UCLA." Before I could follow up, Madison appeared beside us, all warmth and curiosity. "What are you two whispering about?" "Just swapping stories," I said, smiling. But I felt something shift, like the temperature had dropped. That afternoon, I caught a moment between Madison and the real wedding planner, Jeffrey. He approached with a concern. She snapped, "I don't pay you to bring me problems. Fix it." When she saw me nearby, her entire demeanor changed. "Jeffrey, I'm so sorry," she cooed. "Stress talking. Please do what you think is best." Jeffrey nodded, but his eyes said something else, like someone unsure whether to trust the next smile. By that evening, I wasn't sure what to believe anymore. The sun rose on the third day, casting long golden lines across the Napa hills. The air was crisp, fragrant with dew and grapevines, but a low current of tension seemed to follow me everywhere. Something intangible hung in the atmosphere, like a story unfolding in the background that no one else was reading. The day started with a bridesmaids' brunch, hosted on the upper terrace, where tables were draped in pastel linens and glass pitchers brimmed with mimosa and fresh berries. Madison arrived in a floral sundress, all smiles and sweet chatter, looking as if she had floated out of a lifestyle magazine. She greeted everyone warmly, but I couldn't help noticing the slightly hollow glint in her eyes, like someone watching herself perform from the outside. She took her seat at the center of the table like royalty, her presence perfectly orchestrated. Between casual toasts and group selfies, she kept checking one of her phones, occasionally stepping away for whispered conversations. When she returned, the smile always reappeared, but the shine never quite reached her eyes. During one of her absences, Stephanie leaned toward me. "You ever feel like she's playing a role?" Her voice was soft, uncertain. "Like everything is too polished." I hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. "I've had that feeling, yeah." "And she keeps switching phones. Different cases. I've seen at least 3. Stephanie raised an eyebrow. "That's weird." When Madison returned, she carried herself with the same unshakable grace. But now I was watching her like a hawk. Every word, every glance, every micro-expression. The more I looked, the more I noticed the effort. This wasn't effortless charm, this was a high-stakes performance. Later that afternoon, the bridal party convened in the estate's main dressing room for final gown fittings. It was supposed to be a light-hearted prelude to the big day, filled with laughter, nervous excitement, and maybe a few happy tears. Instead, what unfolded gave me a disturbing new layer of doubt. Madison orchestrated the fittings like a drill sergeant in silk heels. She complimented a bridesmaid's new hairstyle, but only after making sure the original one had been firmly dismissed. She cooed over another's choice of jewelry, only to suggest a last-minute change with a tone that made it sound more like a correction than a compliment. Then came her own fitting. The stylist adjusted her dress slightly at the waist, noting it could help with movement during the ceremony. Madison's reaction was instant. "We're not changing anything," she said, her voice low and even. "It was approved weeks ago." The smile never left her lips, but the chill in her tone made the room go quiet for a beat. Once the fitting resumed, I slipped out and found myself in the hallway near the staircase. Madison was there too, standing by the window and speaking softly into her phone. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but she didn't see me at first. "No, I told you Sunday. Everything will be finalized then. I don't care if it's risky. We're already this deep. Just be ready to transfer as soon as the documents hit the account." Her voice was cold, professional, entirely unlike the soft-spoken bride she portrayed in public. She caught sight of me, froze for half a second, then launched into an airy explanation about confirming a brunch detail with the caterer. I nodded, pretending to believe her, but my gut said otherwise. By the time the rehearsal dinner began that evening, I was unraveling. I kept scanning her for cracks in the facade, and slowly, they began to emerge. A flinch when someone asked about her Stanford experience. A slight stutter when Kyle's aunt brought up her family's winery investments, which I remembered Madison earlier claiming her father had sold years ago. The lies were subtle, inconsistent, and oddly unnecessary. Michael, too, seemed on edge. At dinner, he barely touched his food. After dessert, as the group drifted toward the fire pit for after-dinner drinks, he pulled me aside. "She's hiding something," he said without preamble. "I know," I whispered back. He paused, then added, "And I think your brother's caught up in it. Financially, emotionally, maybe worse." My heart skipped. "Why would you say that?" I overheard part of a call when I passed her earlier. She was talking about transferring access and delays in verification. That doesn't sound like anything wedding-related to me. Neither of us slept well that night. The morning of the wedding dawned cloudless and warm, but the mood inside me felt anything but serene. I dressed in my bridesmaid gown with trembling hands, scanning the room for clues. Madison breezed in radiant in her robe, makeup half done, her energy rehearsed and performative. As the photographer snapped staged candids of us helping her with jewelry, I leaned close and asked if she was excited. Ecstatic, she replied instantly, too quickly, too precisely. Moments later, she stepped away again, phone in hand, whispering in a hushed tone that didn't match the joyful chaos of a wedding day. I couldn't catch the words, but the tone was tense, clipped, deliberate. When it was time for the actual ceremony, the estate's garden had been transformed into something out of a movie, white petals scattered along the aisle, strings of delicate orchids framing the altar. I stood with the other bridesmaids watching Madison walk down the aisle toward Kyle. She looked flawless, every movement choreographed. Kyle beamed, eyes bright and wide with emotion. But something inside me clenched. I kept thinking about those overheard calls, those mismatched facts, and the chill behind her smiles. The ceremony went off without a hitch. The vows were touching, the guests applauded, the couple kissed, and everyone cheered. But beneath the surface, something felt like it was ticking, waiting to go off. At the reception, Michael barely spoke. I could tell his brain was working overtime. During the speeches, he leaned in and said, "We need to talk. Now." We slipped away to the estate's library, a quiet space with leather chairs and towering bookshelves. "I did some digging," he said, pulling out his phone. "While you were with the bridal party, I ran a few checks. She never graduated from Stanford. There's no Madison Green in the 2022 MBA records. Nothing. No internship listings, no job placements." My mouth went dry. Maybe she used her middle name. He shook his head. "I tried that too. Nothing. And here's the kicker: I checked the Seattle property database. Her father doesn't own any of the buildings she mentioned. In fact, he declared bankruptcy 4 years ago." The room spun. "Why would she lie about that?" I asked, but the question already felt hollow. Michael leaned forward. "Because it's part of something bigger. She's using this wedding, this image of success and connection, for something else. Maybe it's financial. Maybe she's pulling Kyle into a scam. Or maybe it's even deeper. What do we do? That brunch tomorrow, we confront her. Together. But we never got that chance. The next morning, just before the farewell brunch, Michael pulled me aside. "We have to leave. Now." And that's where I began this story. Because what he found, what he showed me in those final moments, changed everything. The lies, the manipulation, the trail of digital footprints she hadn't cleaned up. It was all there. And suddenly, I realized just how much danger Kyle might be in, financially, legally, even emotionally. This wasn't a fairy tale wedding. It was a house of cards. And we had just seen the first one fall. He had been at the groomsmen's dinner with Kyle, but apparently wrapped up early. "How was your evening?" I asked as we walked back to our room. "Interesting," Michael replied thoughtfully. "Kyle's friends are great, but..." He hesitated. What I pressed. "It's probably nothing, but some of the stories Kyle tells about how they met don't exactly line up with what Madison has told others." Curious, I asked for examples. Kyle says they met at a charity auction where he outbid her for a vacation package. But one of her friends mentioned that Madison tells people they met when she spilled coffee on him at a cafe. I frowned. Those were two very different stories. Maybe they just remembered things differently, I thought, though. I could see Michael wasn't convinced. Neither was I. That night, as I prepared for bed, my mind replayed every interaction with Madison since our arrival. Small inconsistencies surfaced, the fleeting cracks behind her polished exterior that didn't quite sit right. Yet I rationalized it could be wedding stress. After all, these events bring out the worst in some people. I told myself to be patient and gave her the benefit of the doubt, though a nagging unease lingered as I drifted off to sleep. The wedding day dawned clear and beautiful, with a gentle breeze tempering the warmth. From my window, I watched the staff arrange rows of white chairs and build a rose-covered arch in the garden. Despite my worries, I resolved to focus on Kyle's happiness. This was his day, and clearly he adored Madison. Who was I to doubt his judgment over a few odd moments? Inside the bridal suite, the atmosphere buzzed with activity. Madison sat serenely in the midst of it, a makeup artist perfecting her face, and a stylist adjusting her elaborate updo. She looked stunning. "Audrey," she called, Come sit by me. I want to give you something. She handed me a small box containing a delicate silver bracelet with a single pearl. It's my way of thanking you for welcoming me into your family, she said, eyes meeting mine in the mirror. Kyle says you're his rock, so your approval means everything. I was touched and felt guilty for my suspicions. It's beautiful. Thank you. The ceremony was flawless. Kyle, handsome and nervous in his tuxedo, looked utterly mesmerized as Madison walked down the aisle in her designer gown, drawing audible gasps from guests. Their vows were heartfelt. Madison's voice trembling with emotion as she spoke of finding her forever home in Kyle and our family. Watching them exchange rings, I pushed aside my doubts. She clearly loved him. At the reception, Madison was the perfect bride, gracious, charming, moving effortlessly from table to table. She paid special attention to my parents, keeping their glasses filled and engaging them warmly. Yet I noticed something strange. Madison's actual family seemed sparse. Besides Stephanie, the maid of honor, who was supposedly her cousin, and an older couple presented as her aunt and uncle, few relatives appeared. Most guests were either Kyle's friends or Madison's parents' acquaintances. Dancing with Michael. I voiced my observation. Where are her Stanford friends? Childhood friends. Most here seem linked to her parents or Kyle. Michael frowned, admitting he'd thought the same. And have you noticed her accent changes depending on who she talks to? Indeed, with my parents, her voice had a marked West Coast lilt. With her uncle, it shifted subtly. I suggested maybe she unconsciously mirrored people's speech, but I wasn't convinced. Throughout the evening, I saw Madison directing conversations, deliberately steering some people toward or away from each other. She seemed intent on keeping my father and her own engaged deeply in investment talk. Overhearing fragments, I caught phrases like, "With your expertise in sustainable energy and my connections in Asia, we could create something revolutionary." My father, an expert in green energy investments, looked intrigued but wary. Later, I noticed Michael taking deliberate photos of Madison with different groups. When I asked, he said he was just capturing memories, but his tense expression hinted at deeper concerns. The celebration went on well past midnight. Exhausted yet uneasy, Michael and I retreated to our room. "Did you enjoy yourself?" I asked. "Mostly," he answered, leaving the rest unspoken. We both felt the day's undercurrent of tension, but were too tired to delve deeper. The next morning's post-wedding brunch was at the estate's garden. Despite late nights, most guests appeared nursing Bloody Marys and mimosas. Kyle and Madison sat at the center table, tired but happy. Madison had changed into a simple white sundress, her hair casually tied back. Michael seemed distracted, frequently checking his phone and stepping away for calls, unusual behavior for our vacation time. Sitting with my parents, who were glowing over Kyle's happiness, my mother praised Madison as wonderful. The groomsmen echoed similar sentiments, accomplished, poised, a great match for Kyle. But my father whispered about a fascinating conversation he had with Madison's father regarding joint ventures. Alarmed, I asked if he was seriously considering investing with a man he just met. "Robert isn't just anyone," my father replied, visibly offended. "He has an impressive portfolio, and we're having lunch next week to discuss details." Before I could react, Michael's phone buzzed again. He glanced at the screen, his expression hardening, then excused himself, pacing outside for an intense conversation. When he returned, his face was grim. Madison approached our table just then, smoothly shifting into conversation with my father about investment strategies, specifically the Sherman portfolio diversification approach, something proprietary to my father. How did she know? As they talked, Michael leaned close and whispered, "We need to leave now." I was stunned. "What? The wedding just happened. We can't leave in the middle of brunch." "Trust me," he urged quietly. "It's about the bride." "What do you mean?" I hissed. "She's not who she says she is." Michael's jaw clenched. "Madison Wilson doesn't exist. Your brother married a con artist targeting your family, especially your father, for months." My blood ran cold. "How do you know?" "I'll show you everything, but not here." Michael stood abruptly, feigning an urgent call. I'm needed for an emergency surgery back in Chicago. We have to leave immediately. My mother looked disappointed. Can't someone else handle it? It's a complex case I've been managing, Michael replied smoothly. I wouldn't leave if it weren't necessary. As Michael made our excuses to Kyle and Madison, Madison's expression was perfectly measured, disappointed, but understanding the concerned sister-in-law. I hoped we'd get to know each other better, she said, embracing me. But her eyes flashed with a cold calculation that sent a chill down my spine. Minutes later, we were driving away. Once out of sight, I demanded an explanation. Pulling over at a scenic overlook, Michael opened a folder of images and documents on his phone. I knew something was off the moment we arrived, he began. Small inconsistencies, subtle manipulation. It reminded me of a patient who faked symptoms for drugs. So you thought she was a con artist because she reminded you of a patient? No, I followed my instincts and investigated. After the rehearsal dinner, I contacted a friend in private security for a background check. I was stunned. You investigated our brother's fiancé without telling anyone. I hope to be wrong, Michael admitted. But what came back confirmed my fears. He showed me a driver's license for a woman named Erica Donovan, undeniably Madison but with darker hair, dating 3 years back in Boston. She was married to a hedge fund manager, Lawrence Piton, then vanished with nearly $2 million after being introduced to his top clients. More images followed Madison with different hair colors, aliases, and alongside various men. News articles detailed investment scams and missing funds linked to her. This can't be real, I whispered, overwhelmed. Michael continued. She's had at least 3 confirmed identities over 5 years: Madison Wilson, Erica Donovan, and Catherine Miller. The pattern is the same: marry into wealth, infiltrate the family's finances, then disappear with as much as possible. But Kyle doesn't have millions, I said. He's not the target, Michael said grimly. Your father is. Kyle's just the entry point. I stared in disbelief as police reports, news articles, and an FBI bulletin warning about a woman matching Madison's description flashed on the screen. She's been operating for 7 years, Michael added. Usually with a team, people posing as family or associates to build trust. I recalled Stephanie's confusion about Madison's university and the parents, who seemed like actors. Michael told me the man posing as her father had links to other scams targeting wealthy business owners with Ponzi schemes. Scrolling through more documents, my hands trembled. Marriage certificates for Erica Donovan and Lawrence Piton and Catherine Miller and Richard Hoffman surfaced. Both men suffered financial ruin, some declared bankruptcy. She's after Dad now, Michael said. That's why she's so focused on his business. I pieced together the oddities: multiple phones, shifting accent, secretive calls, detailed knowledge of Dad's finances. We need to tell Kyle, I said, heartbreaking for my brother and parents. Michael cautioned people like her are skilled at deflecting accusations. If we're careless, she could vanish with what she's taken, or worse, turn the family against us. What now? We gather more evidence and present it all at once, no warnings. How do we get that evidence? Has Madison accessed your father's accounts? Passwords, devices? Dad keeps everything on his laptop and mentioned showing Madison's father financial projections recently. We must check if anything's been compromised. Michael nodded. We need to act fast. Her pattern shows she moves within days of the wedding while everyone's distracted. We drove to a nearby town, checked into a hotel, and planned. Michael contacted his security friend while I called a cybersecurity expert, Jen, for help checking Dad's accounts. Jen agreed but needed Dad's permission and credentials. I fabricated a story about investment advice. Dad complied immediately. 2 hours later, Jen called back with bad news. Someone installed a sophisticated keylogger 3 days ago, capturing passwords, account details, communications. I shuddered. Can you trace it? The intrusion came from a device on the same Wi-Fi network as your father, someone physically present at the wedding venue. I've disabled it and changed passwords, but a lot has already been compromised. Relaying this to Michael, his face darkened. We have to go back tonight. Back at the estate, as dinner ended, I texted Kyle urgently to meet privately. In the library, he was wary. Why the secrecy? Why leave so suddenly? Taking a deep breath, I said, Kyle, this will be hard to hear, but we have proof Madison isn't who she says. His expression hardened. What are you talking about? Michael opened his laptop. Madison Wilson doesn't exist. She's used multiple aliases, is wanted in fraud cases. Here's everything. Kyle laughed it off, calling it insane. For 20 minutes, we laid out the evidence, multiple identities, marriage fraud, financial theft, the spyware on Dad's computer. His face paled. This can't be real, he whispered. We've been together nearly a year, I would have noticed. Michael gently said, she's a professional con artist with elaborate stories and accomplices. Kyle's voice cracked. If this is true, none of it was real. Before I could comfort him, the library door opened. Dad appeared confused. Madison entered, feigning concern. Where did you all go after dinner? Kyle looked at me wordless. Dad, you need to see this. It's about Madison, he said. Dad's reaction mirrored Kyle's disbelief, then anger at us for accusations. Michael walked him through everything, including the unauthorized computer access. We need to confront her, Dad said, voice firm. No, Michael interrupted. We involve police first. Dad shook his head. Not yet. I want to hear her side first. Kyle remained silent for minutes, staring at a wedding photo. I want to confront her. Alone. No way, I said. She's dangerous. She's my wife, Kyle replied, voice breaking. If anyone should demand the truth, it's me. We compromised. Kyle confronts Madison with family present. Mom insisted on being included. Waiting in the suite, I pulled Kyle aside. Are you ready? No, he admitted, but I have to. Madison arrived, casually dressed, hair in a ponytail, the picture of concern. What's wrong? She asked, eyes scanning us. Kyle stepped forward. We know who you really are. Or should I call you Erica Catherine? Which do you prefer? Her expression flickered surprise, calculation, then feigned confusion. Kyle, you're scaring me, she said. Michael opened his laptop. We have documents, marriage certificates, police reports, news articles about the men you defrauded. Madison laughed, forced. Ridiculous. Must be a mistake. Someone who looks like me, maybe. No mistake, Dad said coldly. Someone installed spyware during the wedding, trying to access my accounts. Madison's eyes narrowed. She glanced toward the door, calculating. Don't even think about leaving, I warned. Security knows not to let you go. It was a bluff no security called, but Madison didn't know. I don't know what game you're playing, she said, voice hardening, but I won't stand here and be accused of crimes I didn't commit. Kyle, you can't believe this nonsense. Kyle's face was pained. I want to believe you. Explain then. Why is there a marriage certificate showing you married Lawrence Peaton 4 years ago as Erica Donovan? For a moment she feigned outrage. Then her posture shifted. The mask slipped away. Well, she said, voice clipped and cold accent unplaceable. I underestimated you, Dr. Mitchell. Most people see what they want. You were kind, I didn't dislike our time together. But business is business. What business, Dad demanded. Defrauding innocent people, ruining lives. She smiled, eyes empty. I prefer wealth redistribution. Men like you have more money than you could spend in 10 lifetimes. I just help spread it around. To yourself, I spat. She shrugged. I provide a service. Make people happy, love excitement. Comes at a price. Where are your accomplices? Michael asked. They left last night. Standard procedure after the main event, she said with a smirk. Her callous talk of the wedding as the main event turned my stomach. Kyle looked devastated. You won't get away, Dad said. We have everything documented. She interrupted. And what will police do? Charge me for marrying a man who gave me access willingly. I haven't taken anything yet. Kyle signed a generous prenup. Michael pointed out that prenups obtained under false identities are invalid in court. Madison looked less confident, but warned. Prosecuting means admitting how easily you were fooled. The press would have a field day. Prominent investors scammed by fake socialite. Is that good publicity? Silence fell. Kyle spoke stronger now. Other men you conned didn't press charges for fear of embarrassment, but patterns matter. That's federal. Enough for charges. Her eyes briefly flickered concern before regaining composure. Fascinating. But our relationship is over. She reached for her purse. I'm leaving. You won't find me. Dad pulled out his phone. While we talked, security froze all my accounts and notified the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. They want to speak with you. Real fear flashed across her face. You're bluffing, my father said calmly, holding up his phone to reveal an email from the FBI confirming they had received his tip. He continued with steady authority. You have two options. Wait here for the FBI to arrive, or run off with nothing but the clothes on your back. Your operation is compromised. Your accomplices have abandoned you. It's over. Madison's composed mask began to crumble as she scanned the room and realized she was trapped. Her gaze settled on Kyle. I could have made you happy, she said, one last attempt to manipulate him. We could have had a good life together. Kyle shook his head with a mixture of disgust and pity. None of it was real. You never existed. The hours after confronting Madison blurred into a whirlwind of police reports, FBI interviews, and shocking discoveries. We learned her true identity was Alexandra Petrovich, born in Belgrade, Serbia. She had been running scams since her late teens, escalating to intricate marriage and investment frauds that ensnared our family. The FBI had been trailing her network for years, always just behind. The people posing as her parents and relatives at the wedding were professional con artists connected to various crews nationwide. Some had been identified, but many remained elusive. Kyle was shattered. The sheriff's deputies had to support him as he watched the woman he had just married less than 2 days ago being led away in handcuffs. The marriage would be annulled, but the emotional wounds were not so easily healed. The wedding guests were given a sanitized version. Madison had misrepresented herself, so the marriage was nullified. Most assumed it was a green card scam or a hidden past uncovered. Only our immediate family knew the full truth. In the days that followed, we uncovered how close Madison had come to succeeding. The keylogger installed on my father's computer had captured enough data to potentially access accounts holding millions of dollars. Had we not acted in time, she and her cohorts could have vanished with a substantial part of his fortune. I still can't believe I was so blind. I'm supposed to be good at reading people, my father said 1 week after the wedding, sitting in his study. It's part of my business. But she was a professional. Michael reassured him. This is what she does. She's been doing it for years. You can't blame yourself. Kyle replayed every moment and conversation in his mind, searching for missed signs. There were clues, subtle ones. But she was skilled at distraction, he admitted hollowly. The important thing is she didn't succeed. FBI's investigation revealed Alexandra had been planning the con for over a year. She targeted Kyle after identifying my father as a high-value mark managing over $300 million in assets made him a prime target. She built an elaborate backstory with fake social media accounts dating back years and hired actors to pose as references in case anyone investigated. The most chilling discovery was a storage unit rented under one of her aliases. Inside were detailed files on our entire family, our routines, preferences, vulnerabilities. She had studied us like specimens, searching for the best way to infiltrate and gain our trust. In the months that followed, our family focused on healing and rebuilding. My father tightened security across all accounts and business dealings. My mother threw herself into supporting Kyle, setting up therapy sessions, and making sure he wasn't left alone with his thoughts. Michael and I stayed in Chicago for 2 weeks after the wedding before returning to our lives. We called Kyle daily, sometimes sitting in silence on the phone when words failed him. Slowly, things improved. 3 months later, Kyle moved to Chicago to be closer to family. He landed a job at a tech company downtown and rented a small apartment near my parents. 6 months out, he went on his first date, a casual coffee with a colleague. It didn't spark romance, but it was a step toward normalcy. 1 year after the wedding, we gathered for a family dinner, not a celebration, but an acknowledgement of how far we had come. Kyle smiled again, cracking jokes and sharing news of an upcoming promotion. My father was learning to trust his instincts again, though now with a healthy dose of skepticism. You know what I learned, Kyle said as we finished dessert. It's not that people can't be trusted. Trust has to be earned over time, not given away in a rush of emotion. And real love doesn't try to isolate you from your support system. My mother added, it strengthens those connections. Michael squeezed my hand under the table. In a strange way, this ordeal strengthened our family too. His persistence and instincts protected us from disaster, and my faith in him never wavered. The legal process against Alexandra Petrovich continues. She's linked to at least 5 similar scams nationwide, and prosecutors are confident she'll face significant prison time. Some accomplices have been arrested, though the man posing as her father, suspected to be the ringleader, remains at large. Our family emerged stronger and wiser. This experience taught us to trust our gut when something feels off, to look beyond perfect facades for the truth beneath, and most importantly, to cherish the genuine bonds that sustain us through life's hardships. We were targeted because we were close and trusting. But in the end, those very qualities saved us. Our bonds were tested but not broken. Kyle, though still healing, is looking to the future. The woman he loved may never have existed, but his capacity for love remains intact. One day, he'll find someone worthy of that gift. If you've ever had that gut feeling that something's wrong about someone who seemed perfect on the surface, I hope you remember our story. Trust your instincts. Look beneath appearances. Real love, unlike counterfeit versions, can withstand scrutiny and endure over time. Have you ever been warned by your intuition about someone? Share your story below. And if this story helped you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Protecting yourself and your loved ones begins with awareness. Thank you for listening. I wish you relationships founded on genuine trust and love.